Hey everyone, my name is Abby, and the rhetorical theorist our group chose was Plato, and I'm here to introduce you to his early life. To begin, Plato was one of the most influential and far-reaching theorists, and even to this day, his writings about rhetoric are still highly regarded. As we may know, he is greatly known for his first school called the Academy. He was also born into a very wealthy and politically active family from the Athens, and he was only educated by the best in his life. So, to talk a little bit about his road to fame, it all started with being a follower of Socrates, and he was also the teacher of Aristotle. Now, Socrates' style of teaching, it really had an impact on Plato, and it really influenced him a lot on how he viewed the world. But unfortunately, after Socrates' death, he spent many years studying and later came out with many books that he wrote about his own ideas and discovered that rhetoric is relevant to one's real world's wants and needs. Plato had his own views on the true meaning of rhetoric, and he didn't really agree with some rhetorical theorists out there. He was very concerned that people would not always make the best decision about what is right and wrong. Quoted, he believed that flowery rhetoric could easily sway opinions and ideas of the truth. So now in my second point, I'll be talking a little bit about his contributions and significance of rhetoric. So to begin, the definition of rhetoric, as we may know, is rhetoric is the art of the spoken word and the art of persuasion. Now, how Plato looked at the word rhetoric, he pretty much viewed it mostly in negative terms because he was kind of worried that it was some sort of mechanism used to misguide the public and make them believe something that is really not true. Although, besides that fact, he still really wanted to pursue his purpose in his definition of rhetoric and give knowledge like a real philosopher. So what he did, he used rhetoric as a tool and really understood how important rhetoric was in order to reach success. So when Plato looked at the word rhetoric, he did not view it as an art. He pretty much told Socrates that it was a knack instead. And what he means by this, he means that rhetoric and how the Sophists were teaching it was basically disrupting human beings and fulfilling the idea of true knowledge. Plato really believed that people did have the responsibility to learn rhetoric themselves to make truth, which is why he disagreed with the Sophists, because they were manipulating their audience about how to deceive the truth. So over time, the meaning to Plato about rhetoric changed. His most critical thoughts on rhetoric are contained in Gorgias. In the beginning, he really struggled to see rhetoric as a distinct art, and he would always argue that in fact it is not true art and was believed to be false art. With some thought, over time, he revised his meaning of rhetoric and now says that rhetoric is a scientific art, but still followed by a strict instruction in his words. Now, we're going to take it over to the third point about our social issue.
Alrighty, so the third point of our podcast is the social issues that Plato faced. Now, most of Plato's social issues that he faced in relation to rhetoric had to do with the sophists. Plato and the sophists never really got along. They had very different ideas of what rhetoric was, how rhetoric should be used, and overall just anything rhetoric-wise, they just did not agree on. Plato took a different take than the sophists, and what the sophists thought was generally believed at the time. So Plato was kind of a mover and shaker in regards to rhetoric and people's opinions on rhetoric. Plato believed that rhetoric was not an art, which is in direct opposition with what the sophists believe. So that was one of the first issues that they faced in relation to rhetoric and their thoughts on it. So that was definitely a social issue that was created in between the two. Plato also believed that rhetoric was a tool of persuasion that, in the wrong hands, could be used to deceive the public. As to where the sophists thought of it was more of an art, could be used by anyone. And the sophists, as Plato said, taught in an unprincipled way. And Plato believed that you must know all truth prior to being able to use rhetoric. He also thought that rhetoric was a learned trait, and in opposition to the sophists because they lacked, as I said, they lacked principles in their teaching. So there was no real solid knowledge that they had prior, as to where Plato believed that you had to have that solid background of knowledge in order to use rhetoric for the right reasons. Overall, Plato and the sophists were almost always in disagreement with their definitions of rhetoric, and that was the main social issue that Plato faced. Just always in a constant battle with the sophists and their ideas of rhetoric.
Thank you, Patty, for talking about the social issues Plato is faced with. So my name's Austin, and my role for the podcast is kind of to analyze the rhetorical aspects of these social issues and kind of talk about the concepts, some of the concepts Plato used to kind of combat them. So as Patty mentioned before, the issue he had with the sophists was that they were very manipulative with their rhetoric, and a lot of what they spoke about was to fit a specific narrative. So to combat this, Plato believed that obtaining more knowledge and educating more people was extremely important. He believed that, thinking more in general was just extremely important to people and improving their education, which would allow them to make more informed conclusions. So he first started off by, he ended up making his own school, which in turn helped him spread, more of his teachings and educate more people within the city of Athens. He really had a main goal of helping people reach a state of, fulfillment, which he referred to as eudaimonia. And that was really like one of his main goals through his teachings. So he did want to make a number of changes to society, because at the time many of the people really looked up to the rich and famous people, and he believed that those role models, I guess, should be replaced with good and well-educated people, as opposed to just being admired for being rich and famous. So that brings me to a little about what I guess he really believed the importance of knowing yourself and the allowing your own ideas and yourself to be subjected to examination rather than acting on impulse or emotion. He thought this was a big issue. So he truly believed that increasing your knowledge and education would allow people to not so easily be pulled into, I guess, misconclusions based on feelings, and allow them to make more informed decisions. So I know it was kind of quick, but I think that covered a few of the concepts he used to kind of combat the sophist and the government at the time, which were just really opposed to his teachings. And we're going to pass it off to Jason to kind of conclude everything we've learned throughout doing this podcast.
Hi, my name is Jason. So in conclusion, I'm going to take a couple of pieces from the story by Plato named Gorgias. And it's a debate between Socrates and the sophists. And according to the textbook Rhetorical Theory and Introduction, it discusses that Plato believes rhetoric is a tool to deceive people and cannot establish a whole truth. And he mentions that it hinders the discovery of the truth, and using the dialectic method could help determine the truth. And that is his suggested method of determining an absolute truth, which defined by yourdictionary.com, it's the art of determining the truth by the logical exchange of ideas and opinions. He also mentions that only a few people can have the ability to know the truth. And one of the quotes in the book, it goes, Plato believed that only our souls could know the reality of a few individuals have the ability to know the truth. Plato believed that every human has the potential to know truth, since a soul which has never seen the truth cannot pass into his human form of ours. So one of the examples that I have from one of his other writings is the allegory of the cave. And it's basically where three prisoners are chained up in a cave, and they have a fire continuously burning behind them. People are constantly walking in front of that fire, casting shadows on the cave. for them to see. So in the story, they're chained to the cave and they were born in the cave, so all they know are the shadows that pass by. And they think that that's their entire world until one day that one of the prisoners escapes and he leaves the cave and he's disoriented and he starts seeing objects and he sees the sun for the first time, which at the end of it is the symbolism for the absolute truth. Um, and it's the reason for all the shadows. He realizes the reason for the shadows in the first place. And then once he realizes that there's more to the world, he goes back into the cave to free the other prisoners, but they cast him away because they think he's crazy. Um, and then Plato goes on to say that he believes that people are too ignorant or stubborn to understand the absolute truth. And to conclude, one key takeaway is that uh, never take information and just accept it on a surface level. Plato, he kind of teaches us to do our own kind of research and making the conclusion to the absolute truth. And to improve civic life would be the concept of death. And as grim of a subject as death is, it's one absolute truth that everybody can agree on. And it's really weird, but once you accept that death is the absolute truth, whether it's a person or a plant, animal, or even a star millions of light years away, um, we can live happier knowing that you can live to the best of your ability and enjoy every day that is given to you instead of wasting your life being worried about uh, what can happen any day and how am I gonna die and things like that. And as grim as it is, we can use it to live humbly, and we can help out each other. And we can help out, volunteering. We can also do things for the environment. To help our current and future generations. For example, we can recycle, we can reduce waste, volunteer for beach cleanups, things of that nature.